Phil, I came to you very long ago, and I liked your videos. Whether they were science, whether they were discussion, whether it was news. I enjoyed them, because you tried to take a position of being unbiased and trying to find the truth. But as of recently, sadly, that has changed. Instead of actually following the Brexit and understanding that the democratic process in Britain resulted in Britain leaving the European Union, instead, you have only remained on a side that will do anything in its power to be salty and not accept what has happened and to see the benefit out of it and actual legitimate grievances of the other side.
If I was placed to bet, I would bet against.
Well, I think, well, everyone did.
Yeah.
It's like 4-1 against.
Yeah. Everyone was like, oh, well, we'll probably, the silent majority will come out. And others were like, nah, fuck it. Too much work.
So, victory for democracy?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Much like how David Cameron could feel a pig skull in his frat house, we too can feel the sorrow, the regret, and the overall sense of helplessness that Thunderfoot is portraying, that the democratic process didn't really work. But I do believe that Thunderfoot must be against democracy, but I wonder how he would stand on it.
What was the vote again?
52 to 48?
Resounding, the country has spoken?
It's not necessarily. There are quite a few who didn't get what they wanted.
So, are you familiar with an expression, a house divided against itself? Is the country more united or less now?
Now, sure, the poll was a pretty close-run thing with 16 million one way and 17 the other. That's to the point where if you were to get a room of, say, 33 people, you really couldn't tell by a show of hands which one was winning. These problems are not new. They are intrinsic flaws with democracy, which is why Churchill called democracy the worst form of government. It's just better than anything else that's been tried. Indeed, none of us live in a real democracy. Even the founding fathers of the United States were fairly disdainful of pure democracy, this sort of two wolves and one sheep voting over who to eat for lunch type democracy. Or what Thomas Jefferson had to say on the subject, that democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people take away the rights from the other 49%. Is it just me, or do those numbers look remarkably similar to the Brexit vote number? And if the referendum was held again today, it's likely that the outcome would be reversed. Hardly a sort of ringing success for democracy. What message has this sent to the rest of the world about the British people? Indeed, it's maybe one of the olive branches that you'll see in the future as the UK and the EU will have their renegotiation. I don't know, some token bullshit, and they'll call it a new deal of some sort. Well, now the circumstances are different from what they were before, and you will need another referendum to see what the people think of the new deal. After all, surely 2 referendums is more democratic than just one. I mean, surely you're not one of those anti-democratic people who thinks that the way a referendum works is once you get the result you want, that the people cannot change their mind afterwards. Better hurry though, because the reality is, if you don't get your arse in gear, there may not even be a United Kingdom left to hold such a referendum.
But I don't honestly think that Thunderfoot hates democracy. I think he just hates the outcome of it in this case. He would have preferred that the UK would have stayed in the European Union, and in order to defend his positions, we will see how he is intellectually dishonest, tries to misrepresent information, and refuses to understand the relativism of the other side in order to understand where they are coming from, while he just jokes around and sounds like a homeless Revelations preacher in New York talking about how the end times are going to come and how the world is seemingly going to end.
And most of them have no idea that they send an incredible 1% of their average taxes to Europe.
How much tax do you pay to the European Union as a fraction of your total tax?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to calculate it.
Your typical Brit earns about £30,000, euros, dollars, doesn't really matter what. About 1/3 of that goes in tax. That's about £10,000, of which about 1/5, 2,000 or something, goes to the NHS. Guess how much goes to the European Union?
Probably not all that much, no.
About £100. About 1%
Okay.
of your tax goes to the European Union.
So some of
And
my
you're-
tax
and
goes to the
of-
European Union.
Right, and of that
Okay.
1%, most of it actually comes back in one form or another. In that you're paying them,
Yeah.
and they're giving you the money back in terms of research grant or building opera
Yeah,
houses or
that's-
some silly
yeah,
shit
that's
like
fine.
that. Right, most of the money is coming straight back. And you're really worried about your taxation of without representation on 1% of the actual tax that you pay.
I would be concerned about it on 0.1%. I would be concerned on any amount. The fact that this is the system.
Bullshit.
I totally
You should
would.
spend 99% of your time worrying about the tax. I mean, have you any idea of the silly things that the UK government spends its money on?
And this is just a clear example of how intellectual dishonesty and misrepresenting a point can occur. Although the UK government may spend 99% of its taxes on other forms instead of the European Union, the 1% of tax is unrepresented in the way that it is spent. It is not spent by the UK government, that is made up by representatives, which Thunderfoot will bring up later and I will touch up upon. It is spent by unelected bureaucrats from the European Union. That is where problems arise, and just because it is only 1% of someone's total taxes does not delegitimize that it is a spending issue. It is money still being spent. Although it may be spent for different means by the UK government, throwing out a red herring saying, oh, taxes are being spent elsewhere too. So, is that a problem? Well, yes, it can still be a problem, but giving money to the EU clearly here is a problem that people have because there's no representation of spending. But furthermore, this will only continue, but instead of throwing out red herrings, it is straw manning every single argument put forward by the Leave campaign, but also a defense mechanism by Thunderfoot for why the EU should have remained and how much better it was, and the reality in which he believes it existed.
Sure, I've not lived there for about 15 years now, but I did grow up there. I know the country, and I've got news for you. It's not all those EU laws about flame retardant labels that are keeping Britain down, and I love just how many of you have been convinced that it was by things like the Brexit movie.
You know what I love, Thunderfoot? I love that you think that the worst regulations that the EU can impose and did impose was flame retardant pillows, but in reality, they passed much more stupid regulations that try to keep people safe, like, oh, I don't know, that water can't be labeled as being able to cure dehydration, or, I don't know, maybe rules passed by the EU saying that bananas must be free of abnormal curvatures and at least 14 centimeters in length, but, you know, that law was so necessary that they got rid of it. Or even for an egghead like you, there's a regulation from the EU that you cannot sell eggs by the dozen, but instead you must sell them by their weight, because fuck logic and numbers.
And to the delightful trade-friendly British laws about, no lead in kids' toys?
And this is why people are having trouble with your videos on Brexit. This is why people have trouble with the Remain Party. You strawman all of their positions, you act like they're idiots, and you refuse to acknowledge that there's actually evidence on the other sides. Like, all that you can show is, wow, there's seatbelts and no lead in kids' toys. Well, granted, there is that. The EU can pass regulation for that. But if they just pass absurd laws that do nothing, there actually is a problem with the EU using its power to enact legislation through bureaucrats that were not elected by the British people in any way to impose regulation over them. This is where problem begins, and this is where people have problems from. And if you do not acknowledge this, your videos will continue to be scrutinized by people who simply disagree with you, but actually have legitimate reasons to disagree. And although I've liked your videos for so long, I've admired them, they've given me inspiration not only to think in a different way, but to act in a different way. To try to stand up for what is wrong and people being intellectually dishonest, and not valuing or conceding opinions from the other side. But now, you are doing that, Phil, and I'm afraid not only for your channel, but for my future with you as well. as a viewer. And we're not asking for much. We are just asking for you to see the other side. And that includes the other side of quotes that you are using. Although in your videos so far about Brexit, there is very strong confirmation bias to the ills of Brexit and the arguments surrounding it, the scale to which this intellectual crime is committed can be summed up by your use of this quote. The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. And I think that this stands true for you, Phil. For you see, spending 5 minutes on your videos doesn't see the full picture at all. Or the rest of the quote to be precise, which is followed by this. Many forms of government have been tried and will be tried in this world of sin and woe. No one pretends that democracy is perfect or all-wise. Indeed, it has been said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time. And from time to time again, we will have people complain about democracy, Phil. We will have people see how it ended up badly. But in the same respect, democracy is the best system that we have. So even if you are salty that people voted in a democratic system to be pro-democratic, it is only their choice, and it's the best choice that they have, because they are free men, and they can make their own decisions with their own autonomy to leave, to stay, to do whatever they want. But most of all, they also have the autonomy to go out and find the rest of this quote like you did not.